Hey, this is your host, AJ Rounds, along here with my co-host, Jake McHargue from CB Vault, and I'm from RevRoad. We're excited here for this week's Midnight Founders podcast episode with Rachel Quarnberg. She's the founder and owner of Aubrey and Baer, which is a really cool story. I love how she told us about how her business is built on a mission to help those that are in the NICU with their babies have a better experience. And from there, it's grown huge, even through a move from state to state. And she's grown this thing with herself and her husband helping behind the scenes. It's a really cool story. I think you're going to love it. Get ready for an awesome episode. Okay, let's get started.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Midnight Founders podcast. We're excited to be here. Today we're interviewing Rachel Quarnberg with Aubrey and Baer.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Rachel.
Great.
We're good.
Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. It was a long walk from your facilities, which are about 10 steps away, to here, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. We're in our building.
Great. Love this.
Well, Rachel, we'd love to know more about Aubrey and Baer. Can you tell us kind of how you got the idea, how it got started, and why Aubrey and Baer?
Yeah, so this is it's a long story. We'll give you a semi-abbreviated version. When my husband was active duty military, we lived in Eagle River, Alaska. We were stationed there for 4 years.
Cool.
And I was a new mom. I had one child and I was really bored. So I started a little Etsy store, and I had Audrey, who was my first daughter, and Bear, who was our pup. And so
I'm seeing a connection
yeah.
here. Yep.
So the original name of the company was Audrey's Baer. That's what I had named my Etsy store. We rebranded a few years ago, and they said no more apostrophes, so it became Aubrey and Baer. So I started my little Etsy store, and I had a few things in there. It was more just a hobby, something fun to do. And then as I was approaching having my second child, I realized that she was not going to have anything that was uniquely hers at all. Everything that she was going to have was a hand-me-down. And in some weird way that only very pregnant women will understand, it brought me a lot of anxiety that she was never going to have anything that was uniquely hers. And so in the middle of the night, I had this idea that I was going to be able to design something that had her name on it that I could give to her when she was born. And it would be my gift to her and my way to kind of present her to my family in a fun and unique way. And I really didn't think anything of it. And I definitely didn't think that anyone else would ever want to buy one. It was kind of just my present to her. So in the morning when I woke up, because I had this idea in the middle of the night, because you don't sleep when you're
Midnight
8.5 months
Founder,
pregnant.
there you go, right there.
I pulled out my Photoshop. The one thing that I feel like I brought from college was my Photoshop knowledge. And I created a design, and I thought, for sure at this point, it was 2014, somebody has figured out how to print on fabric. I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know anyone who knew how to do it, but I did some research, and I found a company that I could upload my files, and they would print it for me and send it to me, and then I could turn it into whatever I wanted it to be. So I did. I uploaded my files.
So just to clarify, so you were taking plain fabric, and you wanted to put designs on it that were unique onto the fabric. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
But I didn't know really I didn't know how it happened.
Oh,
I just
okay.
figured at this point somebody had figured out how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I found somebody to do it. So interesting, there's a lot of hinge points, I think, in this story. And one of them was this fabric was going to cost me $26 for 1 yard of fabric. And that was a lot of money for me. We had no money. We were broke. And I really waffled back and forth on, do I do this? Is this too much of a splurge? I don't know. And I finally just pulled the trigger and went for it. And I'm so glad I did. I got the fabric a few weeks later, and I had just gotten a serger for Christmas, and so I serged the edges, and I packed it up and put it in my hospital bag. And then when she was born, I wrapped her up in it and took a picture, and it turns out everybody thought it was really, really cool. It was cool because I was able to present her in a way that nobody else had before, and give her something special, but also really validating that people thought that it was a cool idea. And I almost didn't even put it on my Etsy store until my husband suggested that I probably should.
So that was the tax write-off idea.
That was the tax write-off. Yeah. So
Good for husbands to think about that, right?
So I put it on there, and a couple months later, I got a first order, which is incredibly validating. It's an amazing feeling. For those 2 months, I remember checking Etsy like 20 times a day, trying to see if anybody cared about anything that I had put out there. And when that first order came in, it's just this overwhelming flood of validation that makes you want to, continue and do more.
It's a thing. It's alive.
It is a thing.
How did you know about price point and all of that? How did you figure all that out?
Oh, I didn't. I knew nothing about pricing. Absolutely nothing. I thought if I want anybody else to buy this, I'm only going to be able to sell it for as much as I would want to pay for it. And I don't really I don't have any money. So I priced them super low. But also, 8.5 years ago, nobody else was doing this. I didn't know of any other company that was doing personalized swaddle blankets at all. I couldn't find one. And so it wasn't necessarily a search term that people were searching on a regular basis. And I didn't have any social media. We didn't even have our own website. It was just an Etsy store. So we were depending on, the Etsy search engine.
Wow.
And nobody was searching for it. So it took some time.
Yeah.
We didn't have any marketing really. So the first few years was all just word of mouth until somebody, her name is Rachel Kavanaugh, she reached out and she had a baby at 29 weeks and her baby was in the NICU. And I didn't know anyone who'd ever had a baby in the NICU. I didn't know what that experience was like. I just couldn't imagine being in her shoes at all. And I just bawled my face off. And I felt so bad. And I wished at that point that I could just give her what she wanted and what she was asking for. But I couldn't. I didn't have any money and I couldn't do it. So I gave her a discount. It was not even a great discount. She was so appreciative. And turns out she was a blogger, which I didn't know because I wasn't ever on social media. And after she got it, she put it under her little 2-pound baby in her isolette and she posted a picture of it. And she said, "You really should have an Instagram account because I know a lot of people would really, really love this." And I was like, okay, how do I set up an Instagram account? Because I didn't have one. I didn't know how to use it. And things really took off after she posted about it. So it was organic growth. After about a year on our Etsy store, the people who I was printing with discontinued our fabric completely, and they didn't know when they were going to bring it back, which is significant because...
Where were they based? Was it here local?
No, I think they were in North Carolina. We were in Alaska. It was
so cross-country shipping and everything. Got it.
And I couldn't find anybody else who would print on this specific kind of fabric. And it matters because when I had my first baby, we used muslin swaddle blankets. You guys are dads. I don't know if you know the difference between swaddle blankets and swaddle blankets, but...
Somewhat. I mean, I know something about blankets, but...
Muslin blankets don't stretch at all. They're really breathable, but they don't stretch, and they really don't work at all. And
the kids just get their arms right out.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
I use mine for a burp cloth. They spit up on it. That's really what it's good for.
And I knew with the second baby, and every baby you learn more and you want to do things different. And so I knew I wanted to do something better. And I had found this fabric at Joann's that was super stretchy and really soft. And the fabric that I found to print on was very similar. It had a lot of the same qualities, which was what made these swaddle blankets work and were really special on top of it because they had the baby's name in it. And they told me they didn't know if they were ever going to bring it back. And so at that point, that was one of these really major hinge points for us because we had to decide, what on earth are we going to do? We thought maybe we had two options. One was to refund everybody's money and just turn it off, because we could. We weren't super heavily invested at that point. It was just me in a craft room and a computer and my serger, which I used for other things anyway. So we could have completely turned it off. It would have been a whole lot easier to do that. Not nearly as rewarding. Or the other option was to learn how to print fabric, which nobody 8 years ago wanted to give us a tutorial on how to print fabric.
It's interesting that was such a niche. I never would have thought that.
It was hard to pull information out of anyone, and it wasn't super readily available on the internet. So we finally pieced a few things together and found an equipment company. And after a lot of prayer and pondering and feeling like we had received some sort of answer, we decided to go for it. But I mean, it was a $50,000 investment out of our own pockets, which were not deep. So we're talking a pretty serious investment. We didn't know anyone who had money. We didn't know to ask anyone for money. It was just like, okay, we'll do it because we feel like we should. So we did it. And
that's cool. The heart of an entrepreneur right there.
Jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
It was
Here we go.
Jumping off a cliff. Yeah. And those first couple years were brutal.
I bet.
They were intense. There was so many things that didn't go over and over and over again. But once I feel like we've learned how to print, I learned how to hire people. There's a lot
Yeah.
going on there, but we were in Alaska, and then after we brought our first set of equipment up there, first of all, Alaska is a little different. People think that it takes the same amount of time to ship something to Alaska as it does everywhere else. It does, and it takes about 15 times longer. So they said, sure, we'll have this up in like 2 weeks. 3 months later, and I had 500 open
No
orders that I had to
way.
fulfill. They finally got the equipment up there.
That's stressful.
And I
Their
spent...
babies are now toddlers.
Yeah, right? They're like, my baby was born 2 weeks ago. Are you going to give
Growing up.
That was intense. The power in the building that we first found, they said it was 3-phase power. Once we got in there, it wasn't 3-phase power. And we had to pay to put in 3-phase power, which was really expensive. The people that brought up the equipment, I had 24 hours, only 24 hours with an actual tech to learn how to use 2 totally different machines in order to make it work. And my husband worked 15-hour days. He was a field artillery officer attached to an airborne unit. So he was gone all the time. And so I worked at night while the kids were sleeping, and then I was up with the kids all day. And that only lasted about 6 months before I felt like I was completely falling apart. And we had to have help. So we moved to Utah at that point.
It's great.
And that was to be close to family or something, to help with the kids, or what?
It was also double-pronged. Everything in our life has a lot of things.
Sure.
Yes, my family's here. His family was here at that point. Then they left and came back. But he also wanted to get a law degree from BYU. So
Got it.
he got a scholarship. Our family was here. It was just kind of, we made the decision, and 3 weeks later we were down here.
Wow.
We don't do things long. We do things very, very quickly.
Make it happen right away.
We just do it.
I love it.
So you guys are printing custom blankets for babies. Tell us about the Swaddle for Swaddle program.
Yeah, so Swaddle for Swaddle came from that first mom that I told you about with her NICU baby. I knew that from those very first days that if I was going to have a business and I was going to spend my time doing it, it sure as well was going to be for a better reason than just to make money. Because I'm not going to spend
Start
my
with the
life
mission. Yeah.
just to make money, because what is the point? I mean, yeah, there is a point to that. You can enjoy a lot of things in life. But at the end of the day, it's just money. It's just money, and it has no meaning behind it. So if I was going to do this and spend my life doing it, then there was going to be something for me to give back. And so we started Swaddle for Swaddle. So for every swaddle blanket that was purchased, we donated one to a baby in a NICU. In the beginning, it was also pediatric cancer centers. But our connections, at the beginning of COVID, everything kind of fell apart because nobody was accessible anymore. Nobody would take anything. Nobody would talk to anybody. And so we really had to rethink how we were
That's too bad.
doing that with people.
What a
Yeah, it was
loss,
really
huh?
unfortunate.
Yeah.
It was hard to get stuff in. It was hard to do. I mean, it was hard for everybody, but
I bet.
So we had a baby later, fast forward a couple years, and I didn't even know about the Swaddle for Swaddle program. And we
Great
had a
family member.
I know.
Yeah.
How did you
I knew
know?
all of our kids had Audrey and Baer blankets, but I didn't know about the Swaddle for Swaddle program. But Emmy was born, and she's our second, and she was in the NICU. And we got a Audrey and Baer Swaddle for Swaddle
Oh, as a
blanket.
gift.
Well, it was just there in the NICU,
Oh,
and I didn't
okay.
I didn't realize it until
Oh,
later.
so it wasn't even a
It wasn't
direct
from
gift.
no, it was
Oh,
it
it's
was
just there.
one of the
Okay.
donated blankets.
Yeah, we work through nonprofits that distribute them to babies in NICUs. So we work
Yeah.
with foundations and now hospitals.
Yeah.
We have them in all the hospitals that have NICUs in Utah
That's
and
cool.
I mean everywhere. The hospitals love them because they are the perfect amount of stretch for
Mm-hmm.
NICU babies that still need the support of like being in a womb.
Yep.
But like I said, the non-stretchy blankets don't work.
Yep.
They don't work at all. So you've created like this really womb-like experience for them to continue to develop. So the nurses, they were supposed to be to give to the babies to take home, but we found out really quickly that they weren't giving them away. They were just keeping them and
Keeping
reusing
them.
them for all the babies.
Wow.
So we have people that give them out as gifts in like gift bags, and then we have hospitals that just use them all the time.
I bet the stories you have from that initiative is just they're incredible. I would think.
Yeah, there's a lot of really tragic things and really hard things that
bet.
happen to families out there. And if whenever I was having a really hard day, I just opened my email be like, okay, I'm fine. My problems are so small compared to what they're going through, and it put everything in perspective, and it kept me going on a lot of really hard days. So
That's so cool. Sounds like you found your mission and you're fulfilling your mission
yeah, we're working on it.
with Aubrey and Baer. That's cool. What I mean, you've learned so many things, Rachel, I'm sure, but what would be a tidbit of advice you'd give other entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their business, whether intentionally or not intentionally, in your case? What advice would you give them if you had one piece of advice to give, or two pieces?
There's a lot. There's a lot to offer there. One, I think, is don't ever get too comfortable. Don't think you know anything, because you don't know anything. Just when you think that you're feeling like everything is going right, you really better be prepared to dig deep, because under the surface layer, there's a whole world of things that are happening that you're unaware of. This happens in my experience, with extreme growth. Like, our growth curve was just so extreme for years. We were growing, doubling and tripling our revenue year
Were
over
investors
year.
like coming out of the woodwork to fund your company? Because that usually that's what happens when you see those J curves, right?
We didn't. You know what? I may have gotten emails. I just never
Opened them.
I just deleted them,
Oh,
because I
wow.
wasn't interested in anybody telling me what to do. And I knew that the second I brought somebody else in, things like expensive programs like Swaddle for Swaddle would be the first things to go, because they don't make sense to the bottom line. They are for the purpose of doing good and not for the purpose of making money.
Yeah.
So, in business terms, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So no, I didn't, and I flirted with the idea over the last couple of years after COVID, and the entire world has changed in so many different ways, and being a small business has become increasingly more difficult month after month with just the way that things are going. I've definitely thought about it, but I don't think so.
Okay.
We've gotten to this point on our own. The first year we had Aubrey and Baer, we made $30,
Yes.
Killed it.
but we made money.
Hopefully you framed some of that.
Yeah, no, I don't even remember. I really just wanted to buy cool sewing tools.
Oh, cool.
So that's what I
A
was
way to
spending
pay
it on.
for
Yeah. And right before COVID, we almost hit $3 million in 6 years.
Congratulations.
So
That's really
there's
cool.
there's a lot to unpack though with that extreme growth curve. You're talking about layers of management taught by somebody who doesn't know how to teach managers, or has no experience in working with managers, or creating training programs based on things that I've invented in my head, that I created, that are based on lots of different tidbits of different experiences that I now have to regurgitate into a way that's teachable. That's really hard. Even just hiring the right people to be the right culture fit for a team that you've created out of your personality. I hired people because I liked them, because I knew I could get along with them, not because I felt like they had this rigid set of skills.
Yeah.
It was all about how we felt when we were at work, and how well we got along together, and how well we were flexible together. But as you're growing at such an intense rate, it's really hard to maintain that kind of culture and to help everybody else adapt to that kind of culture. And so there's a lot of problems that happen that you don't really realize are happening when you're sitting up here trying to make high-level decisions because you love your company and you want it to grow. But 3 levels down, there's all these extra problems that you're going to discover when they're not a small problem anymore. And that's really hard. That's really hard to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hear that a lot, right? That you have a lot of ambiguity as a founder, and you're wearing so many different hats as a founder that it's so easy to get so focused on what you're doing that you miss a lot of those warning signs, and you don't see a lot of the kind of problems in their infancy. It kind of takes longer before you catch them.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things for me when I started was I was a planner, and I had a to-do list, and at the end of every day, I felt amazing if I checked off everything on my to-do list. And it was not a very long amount of time before I was not even getting close to even accomplishing the first thing on my to-do list.
I got one thing
like,
done. One.
I felt like such a failure. But, as time goes on, that list just keeps getting longer and longer, and you are forced to prioritize things.
You have to.
And you end up just putting out fires and fires and fires until somebody sits you down and says, you got to stop. Like, you need to look at the big picture here and see what I'm seeing from the outside, because all these fires down here that could be easily put out are going to be massive fires tomorrow if you don't create a really great foundation for your company, which in a startup that's growing so rapidly with people who I don't have an MBA, I don't have any experience, it just becomes really overwhelming really fast, and it's really easy to miss stuff.
So I heard one piece of advice say, you said, be careful that you don't get too comfortable, and remember you're always learning. What's another? You said you had 2 pieces of advice.
Yeah, get really good at failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We hear that all the time, too.
Don't take it personally, and don't become emotionally responsive to failure, because, the first 15 times of failing, I was just an emotional wreck, like fetal position bawling on the floor like a 3-year-old, because I felt like I had failed the world, and it was this whole big thing. And after a while, you just kind of get used to it, and you start seeing it as other people see it, as a learning experience. Nobody judges you harder than you judge yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you can get outside yourself and see things for what they really are, you're going to be able to fail faster and faster and faster, and get better at failing and learning faster and applying faster, and then you're going to grow faster. But man, if you can stop taking things so darn personally, it's going to make a big difference.
Great
I don't
advice.
even know if I like the word fail. Like, I think there's a stigma.
There's a
around
negative
it.
connotation, yeah,
like, because
right.
with a founder, it's not a failure. Like,
It's a
you're
learning,
taking
really.
steps. Like, it's a growth opportunity
Yeah.
every time, and you're doing something good. And whether it was executed perfectly or not, it doesn't necessarily mean it was a failure.
Oh, but it
I
feels
agree.
like one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
In the
It
moment, you can't say
feels-
that, right?
Well, and especially when you're bringing in other people into the mix, when you feel like you've
Yeah.
let people down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times when I feel like I have to make decisions where there's no right decision. There's a path this way, and there's a path this way, and there's going to be consequences this way or this way. There's going to be negative ramifications of each way you go.
The lesser of 2 evils, almost.
Sometimes, or it's just people's feelings or things that you know about a person that may have happened 2 years ago that you still like you feel like you're still taking into consideration when evaluating that person in making this decision, which may or may not actually be true.
Yeah.
There's so many layers there that
Yeah.
it's hardest when you feel like you're letting people down, because you don't know everything. You can't know everything.
No.
And you're doing your best, but nobody sees everything that's going on all at once. And so you get judged. I feel like judged
Or do
pretty
they know everything
harshly.
that's going on and have all the context, right? And that's hard too, right?
Or they do, yeah. And then, people are going to make whatever decisions they make. And a lot of times they're not going to make the same decisions you do.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You have to get used to being and learning how to be okay with that.
As a female founder, Rachel, that's so impressive to me, and we love bringing female founders onto the show and onto the podcast and hearing their stories and their thoughts. Especially, did you ever come up to any roadblocks because of that?
Yeah.
That were hard.
In the beginning, it was especially hard, mostly because I wasn't super confident in myself, and I didn't have a presence of confidence. People didn't see me as being somebody that they could even talk to. Sometimes they would say, "Well, where's your husband?" Or "I want to talk to him," or talk to me like I'm 5 years old, because they think I'm not going to understand a process. Or when they find out that I'm the one that they're training how to use this, $50,000 piece of equipment, and it's not some 6 foot tall man, you get talked down to a lot.
Oh, interesting.
Or people just don't think you know what you're doing or what you're talking about. Not so much anymore. I don't feel like I get that anymore. But
Do you think it's because
it
you've
happened a lot
gotten
in the
more
beginning.
assertive over time, or what advice do you have for female founders that are in that situation?
Yeah, don't take anyone's crap. Like, call people out on it.
Yes, I love that.
If they're going to treat you like that, then feel free to talk right back at them.
The feistiness is coming out.
Because they don't, you
Sweet.
just realize over time that they don't know what they're doing either. Nobody
Yeah.
knows what they're doing, really.
Good point. Very good point.
And you know more about what you're doing than anybody else in the room. So be confident in what you know you can be confident in.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to call people out when you know that what they're doing is wrong. And hopefully they'll take it as one of those experiences, be like, oh yeah, I really messed that up and I'm going to do better next time. Or be prepared to educate people. Like, the way you said this was really offensive, and here's why. Because of these experiences, or because of these things that usually happen. And women don't respond well when you talk to them like this. So don't do it anymore, and help them. Say, I care about you as a person, and I want you to see that this is not going to work for you long term either.
I love that. That's great advice.
So what's next for Audrey and Baer? You're doing swaddle blankets. I heard you earlier say something about pajamas.
Yes, we're doing pajamas. I'm so excited. I wanted to do pajamas for years and years. Our process is very unique. Most clothing manufacturers, they produce thousands of garments at a time. They're tested and they're regulated. They're all exactly the same. And one of the regulations with children's sleepwear specifically is, in order to have it fully tested, you have to send in the first piece and the last piece of every lot. And a lot is predetermined. You decide how much that lot is. If it's a 10,000 or 5,000, whatever it is that you're saying, this entire lot is exactly the same. And you can take the testing from one and the testing from the other, and if the margin of error is small enough, then you can say, okay, this entire lot is good. It's regulated, it's good, and it's going to be safe. But because we don't do that, we bring in raw fabric and we print on raw fabric, and every piece is different. Every design is different. It was really hard a few years ago to come up with a way to do this exactly. But my husband is now a lawyer and understands the law.
Yes.
a lot more that he graduated from law school.
How convenient is that?
And, there's a lot of different ways to approach it and look at it. And I think we've found a way that's going to work for us. We know that we test our products, and I know that they're safe. And I feel confident putting them out there, knowing they're not going to harm anyone. They're going to be fine. And I'm okay with putting it out there, even though it may not be exactly like everybody else does it.
Sure.
So yes, pajamas.
When?
We had a little bit of a snafu with our original fabric supplier, so we're not using the same fabric that we're using for our swaddle blankets. We're going to use a different fabric for several different reasons. And the first supplier fell through, as I've already started talking about them. So last minute, I found another supplier, and we should be getting a sample in this week. And as long as it checks out, then hopefully in like 3 weeks.
Great.
That's exciting.
So I'm excited about it.
Exciting.
They're really comfy.
Oh.
And I've wanted to do family matching Christmas pajamas for a long
Christmas
time.
pajamas,
So,
here we go.
so we'll
Christmas
be doing
pictures.
a Christmas pre-order launch probably the end of July. So you can get the matching ones.
Well, Rachel, as we're kind of wrapping up here, we love to ask entrepreneurs, and you've kind of shared a few things, but what's the craziest story you have with building your company or running your company or whatever the case may be?
There's a lot. There's a lot of really crazy things that happen. I think one of the funniest stories, it was not funny at the time.
Yes.
It was very unfunny at the time. But I have a picture, and I look back every once in a while, and I remember that, just to laugh, because stuff happens all the time, and it's fine. When we moved down here from Alaska, it was the first time I'd hired anyone. I was just crazy getting stuff taken care of, and we had ordered a shipment of fabric to come in, our swaddle fabric, and it was supposed to meet us in Utah when we were coming down from Salt Lake, or coming out from Alaska, so that we could start production as soon as possible, because we had orders just piling up while we were making this move. And the fabric finally came. It was like a week late.
Just a quick question about that. So these orders were still coming from your Etsy store at this point, or
Etsy store, and we had a website at that point.
So you did have a website
So we
at
had
that
both of
point.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
The fabric finally came, and we didn't have a forklift. The guy brought it in, put it right in the middle of our teeny tiny studio right next to our heat press. I was like, awesome, let's get going. Let's get this done. And I opened up the first roll, and it was neon orange prison suit fabric.
Oh, no.
The pallets had gotten switched somewhere, and our stuff was in Washington at a prison, and we had their jumpsuit fabric.
Oh, my goodness. That's a good story.
I cried.
I bet you did.
And I may have yelled at some people at the transport company.
She apologizes.
That I was not proud of.
And you still have free transportation to the state.
So that was intense. That was intense, but it's still a story we tell when I just let it roll off. Everything always works out in the end one way or the other. It's just what are you going to learn from the experience?
So you
from
made
this one, I'm
Dan-
not really sure what we learned from it besides don't use that shipping company.
some jumpsuits for when he's doing yard work.
Yeah, right.
And they're neon orange.
Yeah, that was
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's fun.
something.
Well, if the audience is listening, if they have interest and they want to buy one of your blankets or products or pajamas that are soon coming out, where do they go to do that?
So our website is audreyandbaer.com. We have everything listed on there. We have an Etsy store. We mostly do everything on our website now, though. We have two different sections on our website. There is the ready-to-ship section, and then there's the personalization shop. We're mostly known for personalized swaddle blankets, and so everything else that we put out there can also be personalized. The way it works is you choose your product and your design, but you can always customize it into the colors that you want. So we have a team of remote stay-at-home moms that work when their kids go to bed, and they will help you customize whatever product you want into whatever design you want. So, for example, if you have a gray and white nursery, but you love a design that's navy blue, they will help you turn that design into something that uses your nursery colors or just something that you like. So if you want to customize, always go to the personalization shop. If you need something really, really quick, you can order from the ready-to-ship section, and we ship those out within a few days.
But even the ready-to-ship ones, you get to put your name on it and stuff like that, right? Or is that all the customized ones?
We switched. We totally separated it so that we'll be on Amazon soon. All of our ready-to-ship stuff will be on Amazon, and our personalized stuff, those just go into a different category, and will be in stores. We opened up our wholesale for that, so we're just trying to open up a lot of avenues for ourselves.
Very exciting.
They're awesome. You don't have to think about baby gifts anymore. Whenever anybody we know has a baby, we just
tell my wife as soon as I get home.
Buy a blanket with their baby name on it.
All done.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Are you? We talked earlier. I can't remember if it was here or pre-show, but we talked about your move to Tennessee soon.
Yeah.
Is that right? Will the company then move with you, or you've got it now established to where it can function here by itself?
Yeah, I have amazing team members, and they don't need me in production anymore. They haven't needed me for a long time.
That's a sign of a great leader right there.
They're nice. I don't feel
That's
like
awesome.
that, but they're really good at their jobs. And so we're moving to Tennessee. Our family's moving to Tennessee, but I'll be traveling back and forth to do. I still do all the content creation and marketing myself. I have worked with other marketing teams before, and there's just nothing like being able to put the exact message out to the right people that you know exactly what's going on.
That's
so
well said.
I still will have to come back and do photo shoots and content creation, especially now because all small business owners have to be content creators all the time. So now I'm a videographer as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, there's some great people like that.
Yeah. So we come back and forth to do that, and having interviews with team members and mentoring and things like that. But we'll be mostly in Tennessee.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good luck, Rachel. So
Awesome
fun to
to
have
talk
you
to you.
here. It's Jake and AJ with Midnight Founders Podcast signing out.